I found the photos at 2 in the morning, scrolling through Victoria's Instagram while she slept beside me, snoring softly into her silk pillowcase. There she was, champagne flute raised against a backdrop of crystal blue water, designer sunglasses perched on her nose, laughing at something off camera. The yacht's name gleamed in gold letters behind her. Executive Privilege. Her boss's yacht. The same boss she'd told me was just a mentor when I'd asked about all those late nights at the office. I sat in our kitchen, staring at my cracked phone screen, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Not surprise. I'd suspected for months. But seeing the evidence laid out in high-definition luxury made everything crystalline clear. At least someone in this marriage is getting a tan, I muttered, screenshotting every image. Victoria had posted 17 photos from what she'd told me was a boring sales conference in Albany. The metadata told a different story, GPS coordinates, placing her somewhere off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. While I'd been scraping together rent money for our craftsman house, she'd been living it up on Charles Loring's floating palace. I opened my laptop and started a new folder. Evidence. Old habits from my journalism days. Always document everything. The photos painted a clear picture. Victoria in a bikini that cost more than my monthly coffee shop earnings. Victoria clinking glasses with Chaz, as she called him in the captions, his arm draped possessively around her waist. Victoria posing in what was clearly the master cabin, silk sheets rumpled behind her. My wife of 8 years, living a double life while I struggled to keep our small business afloat. I scrolled through her other social media accounts, cross-referencing dates. Every conference, every client dinner, every team-building retreat over the past 6 months had been another luxury excursion. Ski lodges in Vermont, 5-star restaurants in Manhattan, weekend getaways to the Hamptons, all funded by her 50-something boss with his inherited fortune and wandering hands. The coffee shop, my coffee shop, had been hemorrhaging money for months. I'd been pulling 16-hour days, begging suppliers for extended payment terms, watching our savings evaporate while Victoria complained about not having enough spending money for her networking events. Now I knew where her real networking was happening. I pulled up Chaz's company website, Loring Industries, commercial real estate development with offices across the Northeast. His bio photo showed a man who'd clearly never missed a meal, silver hair perfectly styled, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. The kind of guy who thought rules were suggestions and wives were interchangeable accessories. My phone buzzed with a text from Ray, my bartender friend who worked the late shift downtown. "You up? Got some gossip you might want to hear about your missus." I typed back, "Already ahead of you, but I'm listening. Saw her at Chez Laurent tonight with that real estate guy. Very cozy. Thought you should know." Chez Laurent. The restaurant where Victoria and I had our first date, back when she still pretended to care about my struggling writer's salary and big dreams. Now, she was taking her sugar daddy there, while I ate ramen noodles for dinner. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I spent the next hour methodically documenting everything. Screenshots, timestamps, location data. I even found credit card receipts she'd carelessly left in her purse. Charges for lingerie, jewelry, spa treatments, all on dates when she'd claimed to be working late. The evidence was damning, but evidence without a plan was just ammunition sitting in storage. I needed strategy. Victoria stirred upstairs, probably dreaming about her next yacht adventure. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness of our kitchen, thinking. The old Ben would have confronted her directly, demanded explanations, probably ended up apologizing for snooping. The old Ben still believed in fairness and honest conversations. But the old Ben hadn't been systematically lied to and financially manipulated for months while his wife lived a secret life of luxury. This Ben was different. This Ben was going to play by new rules. I opened my laptop again and started typing. Not a confrontation. Something better. A carefully crafted email to the gossip blogger who covered local society news. Anonymous tip about a prominent businessman's inappropriate relationship with his employee. I attached the most damaging photos, the ones that clearly showed them in compromising positions on company time. Then I drafted another email to Loring Industries' HR department. Professional concern about potential workplace harassment and misuse of company resources. I included documentation of their trips, cross-referenced with company calendar events that Chaz had supposedly been attending. My finger hovered over the send buttons. Once I pressed them, there would be no going back. Victoria's carefully constructed double life would crumble. Chaz's reputation would take a hit. Their little fantasy world would come crashing down. I thought about all those nights I'd worked alone in the coffee shop, wondering why my wife never seemed interested in helping build our life together. All those times she'd rolled her eyes at my small-town ambitions while secretly planning her escape to bigger, more expensive things. All those lies. I pressed send on both emails. Then I sat back in my chair and smiled for the first time in months. Not a happy smile. Something sharper, more satisfied. "Checkmate, darling," I whispered to the empty kitchen. My phone buzzed with another text from Ray. "Whatever you're planning, be careful. These rich guys don't play fair." I typed back, "Neither do I. Not anymore." The house was quiet, except for Victoria's soft snoring upstairs. In a few hours, she'd wake up and check her phone, probably expecting messages from her lover about their next adventure. Instead, she'd find her world starting to unravel. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, the good stuff I'd been saving for a special occasion, and sat at the kitchen table, planning my next move. This was just the opening gambit. Victoria and Chaz had been playing a game they thought I didn't know about. Now they were about to learn that I'd been studying the rules all along. The first sign that my missiles had found their targets came at 7:30 the next morning. Victoria's phone started buzzing like an angry wasp. She stumbled downstairs in her silk robe, hair disheveled, squinting at the screen with growing alarm. "What the hell?" she muttered, scrolling frantically. I sat at the kitchen counter, calmly eating toast and reading the local news blog on my laptop. The headline made me smile. Local executives' yacht parties under scrutiny after anonymous tip. "Problem, honey?" I asked, not looking up from my screen. Victoria's face had gone pale. Someone leaked photos of the company retreat. They're making it look like something it wasn't." "Company retreat?" I took another bite of toast. "I thought you said it was a sales conference in Albany." She shot me a sharp look. "It was both. A combined event. You know how these corporate things work." I nodded sympathetically. "Must be frustrating when people take things out of context. What kind of photos?" Victoria's phone rang before she could answer. She glanced at the screen and her face went even whiter. "It's Chaz. I mean, Mr. Loring." "Better take it," I said. "Sounds important." She answered with forced cheerfulness. "Good morning, Charles. Yes, I saw the article. No, I have no idea how they got those photos. They must have been taken out of context." I couldn't hear his response, but Victoria's expression told me everything. Her carefully constructed world was starting to crack. "I understand your concern," she continued, pacing toward the living room. "Maybe we should meet to discuss damage control strategies." After she hung up, Victoria stood in our hallway for a long moment, staring at her phone. When she finally returned to the kitchen, her demeanor had shifted. The panic was being replaced by something harder. "This is sabotage," she announced. "Someone is deliberately trying to hurt my career." "Any idea who?" I asked, refilling my coffee cup. "Probably one of the other sales reps. Jennifer's always been jealous of my relationship with management. Or maybe that witch Sasha finally showed her true colors." Interesting. Victoria's first instinct was to blame other women rather than consider that her own behavior might have consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Doc, my old editor who'd transitioned into freelance tech consulting. Saw the article. Nice work. Need any help with the follow-up? I typed back, stand by. This is just the opening act. Victoria spent the next hour on her phone, doing damage control. I listened from the kitchen as she spun increasingly elaborate explanations to various colleagues and friends. The photos were misleading. The blogger was unreliable. The whole thing was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. But I could hear the strain in her voice. The careful confidence she usually projected was cracking. Around noon, she left for the office, claiming she needed to handle this situation professionally. I waited until her car disappeared down our street, then called Doc. "How's your hacking these days?" I asked when he picked up. "I prefer digital investigation," Doc replied. "What do you need?" "My wife's been getting some suspicious online reviews for my coffee shop. All fake, all designed to hurt business. I need to trace where they're coming from." "Send me the links. I'll see what I can dig up." While Doc worked his magic, I drove to the coffee shop to assess the damage. Sure enough, my Google reviews had been bombed overnight. 12 new one-star reviews, all posted within a few hours of each other, all claiming various problems with service, cleanliness, and food quality. The reviews were clearly fake. Several mentioned menu items I didn't even serve, and others described incidents that never happened. But fake reviews could still destroy a small business. Potential customers wouldn't know the difference. I called Google's business support line and spent 40 minutes on hold, only to be told that review removal could take weeks and required extensive documentation. By the time I closed the shop that evening, I'd lost 3 regular customers who'd mentioned seeing concerning reviews online. Victoria's counterstrike was already working. Doc called as I was locking up. "Found your source. The reviews are coming from a guy named Trevor Walsh. Works at Loring Industries in their marketing department. Sloppy digital footprint. He didn't even bother using a VPN." Trevor. I remembered him from Victoria's company Christmas party. Mid-20s, eager to please, the type who'd do anything to impress his superiors. Apparently, that included waging cyber warfare against his boss's lover's husband. "Can you trace it back to who gave him the order?" I asked. "Working on it, but I'd bet money it came from the top. This kind of coordinated attack doesn't happen without executive approval. So Chaz wasn't just content to steal my wife, he wanted to destroy my livelihood too. Probably figured that if I was financially ruined, I'd be too distracted to cause more trouble for his little affair. He'd miscalculated. I spent that evening researching Trevor Walsh. Social media made it easy. The kid posted everything, his workout schedule, his favorite bars, his weekend plans. He even checked in at locations, helpfully providing a roadmap of his daily routine. Trevor parked in the same spot every day in the downtown parking garage where Loring Industries leased space. He always stayed late on Thursdays, trying to impress his supervisors, and he had a habit of taking smoke breaks in the stairwell, away from the building's security cameras. Perfect. Thursday evening, I waited in the parking garage. Trevor emerged from the elevator at 8:15, right on schedule, scrolling through his phone as he walked toward his car. He was so absorbed in his screen that he didn't notice me until I stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. "Trevor Walsh?" I said. He looked up, startled. "Yeah? Do I know you?" "Ben Mallory. I think you've been writing some creative fiction about my coffee shop." His face went through several interesting expressions: confusion, recognition, then fear. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do." I pulled out my phone and showed him screenshots of the fake reviews, along with Doc's tracing report. 12 reviews, all posted from your IP address. Pretty sloppy work for a marketing professional. Trevor glanced around the empty garage, probably looking for security cameras or witnesses. "Look, man, I was just following orders. It's not personal." "Whose orders?" He hesitated. I could lose my job." You're going to lose more than your job if you don't start talking. I stepped closer. Those fake reviews are costing me real money, hurting real people who depend on my business. All so your boss can cover up his affair with my wife. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal, Trevor said, backing toward his car. Just a few bad reviews to keep you distracted. Mr. Loring said it was a temporary thing. Temporary? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think destroying someone's reputation is temporary? Trevor fumbled for his car keys. I'm sorry, okay? I'll take them down. I'll post good reviews to balance it out. Too late for apologies. I grabbed his phone from his hand before he could react. But you're going to fix this mess. Hey, give that back. I held the phone over my head, out of his reach. First, you're going to call Google and request removal of every fake review you posted. Then you're going to write a detailed confession explaining who ordered you to do it and why. Finally, you're going to promise me that you'll never, ever interfere with my business again. I can't do that. Mr. Loring will... I let the phone slip from my fingers. It hit the concrete floor with a satisfying crack, the screen spiderwebbing across the surface. Oops, I said. Guess you'll need a new phone. Hope you backed up all those fake review accounts. Trevor stared at his destroyed phone, then looked up at me with genuine fear in his eyes. You're crazy. No, Trevor. I'm motivated. There's a difference. I stepped closer until he was pressed against his car door. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to clean up this mess, and you're going to stay out of my way. Because if I have to come find you again, I won't be nearly this polite. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing next to his car, holding the pieces of his broken phone. As I drove home, my own phone rang. Victoria, calling from her office. Ben, we need to talk, she said without preamble. Someone's been harassing Trevor from my office. He thinks it might be connected to the blog article. Really? What kind of harassment? Threatening him, destroying his property. This has gone too far. I pulled into our driveway and sat in the dark car, listening to my wife defend the man who'd been sabotaging my business on her lover's orders. Maybe Trevor should be more careful about who he picks fights with, I said finally. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, honey. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. These things have a way of working themselves out. There was a long pause. When Victoria spoke again, her voice was different, colder, more calculating. Ben, are you behind this? The blog article? The harassment? I almost laughed. After months of lies and manipulation, she was finally asking direct questions. Too bad it was far too late for honesty. Behind what? I've been working at the coffee shop all day, trying to deal with a sudden influx of fake negative reviews. Someone's been trying to destroy my business. Any idea who might do something like that? Another pause. I have to go. Charles wants to see me. I bet he does. Give Chaz my regards. The line went quiet. I'd dropped his nickname casually, letting her know that I knew more than she thought. The game was escalating, and Victoria was finally starting to realize she might not be holding the winning hand. I sat in my car for a few more minutes, planning my next move. Trevor would clean up the fake reviews. Fear was an excellent motivator. But Chaz would just find another way to come at me. Time to take the fight directly to him. The recording opportunity came sooner than I'd expected. Victoria announced on Friday that she was having dinner with Sasha at the country club on Saturday night. Girl talk, she called it, but I knew better. Sasha was Victoria's closest friend and biggest enabler. If anyone knew the full extent of my wife's double life, it would be her. Sasha Chen was everything I disliked about Victoria's social circle. A lifestyle influencer with 50,000 Instagram followers, she documented every meal, every outfit, every mundane moment of her carefully curated existence. She was also indiscreet, especially after a few drinks. I called Molly, my neighbor who'd been helping me with odd jobs around the coffee shop. Single mother, sharp wit, and, though I'd never admitted it aloud, someone I'd grown increasingly attracted to as my marriage crumbled. "I need a favor," I told her when she answered. "How do you feel about a little social reconnaissance?" "Depends. Are we talking about your wife again?" "Victoria's having dinner at the country club tomorrow night. I need someone to accidentally bump into them. Maybe record some conversation." Molly was quiet for a moment. "Ben, are you sure about this? Once you start down this road?" "I'm already on this road. The question is whether I'm walking it alone or with backup." She sighed. "What do you need me to do?" Saturday evening, Molly positioned herself at the country club bar, nursing a martini and pretending to wait for a date. She'd borrowed an elegant dress from her sister and looked like she belonged among the old money crowd. Meanwhile, I sat in my car in the parking lot, monitoring the audio feed through a small wireless microphone she'd pinned inside her purse. Victoria and Sasha arrived at 7:30, requesting a table on the terrace overlooking the golf course. Perfect. The outdoor seating would make recording easier, and the ambient noise would provide cover for Molly's presence. I listened through my earpiece as they settled in, ordering wine and catching up on gossip. For the first 20 minutes, it was standard social chatter. Then the wine started flowing, and the conversation shifted. "So, how are things with Charles?" Sasha asked, her voice slightly slurred. "Still playing house on the yacht?" Victoria laughed. "It's not playing house. It's an arrangement that works for both of us. He gets companionship. I get access to a lifestyle Ben could never provide." "And Ben doesn't suspect anything?" "Ben's too busy feeling sorry for himself to pay attention. His little coffee shop is failing, and instead of adapting, he just works harder at the same losing strategy. It's pathetic, really." I gripped the steering wheel tighter, but kept listening. "What about the blog article?" Sasha continued. "That was pretty specific. Someone had inside information." "Charles thinks it was corporate espionage, one of his competitors trying to embarrass him. We're being more careful now, but honestly, I don't see why we should have to sneak around. Ben and I are basically roommates at this point." "Are you going to leave him?" Victoria paused, and I could hear the clink of her wine glass. "Eventually. Charles is talking about getting a place in the city, something more sophisticated than this small-town existence. When that happens, I'll make my move." "What about Ben? Won't he make things difficult?" "Ben's a journalist. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else, but he's actually quite predictable. He'll be hurt, he'll sulk, but ultimately he'll accept reality. He always does." Sasha giggled. "You make it sound so clinical." "It is clinical. Marriage is a business arrangement, and Ben's not holding up his end. Charles offers better terms." I closed my eyes, listening to my wife discuss our 8-year marriage like a failed merger. The casual cruelty in her voice was worse than the affair itself. The conversation continued for another hour, with Victoria detailing their upcoming plans: a weekend in the Bahamas, shopping trips to Manhattan. Eventually, a permanent move to Charles's penthouse apartment. She'd planned out her entire exit strategy while I'd been scrambling to save our business and our relationship. When they finally left the restaurant, I waited in the parking lot until Victoria's car disappeared. Then I called Molly. "Did you get it all?" I asked. "Every word. Ben, I'm so sorry. I know this must be painful to hear." "Pain comes later. Right now, I need to focus on strategy. Can you meet me at the coffee shop? We have work to do." Molly arrived 20 minutes later, still wearing the elegant dress. In the harsh fluorescent lighting of the empty shop, she looked like a movie star who'd wandered onto the wrong set. "You know you can't use this recording in court," she said, handing me the audio device. "It was obtained without consent." "I'm not planning to use it in court. I have something else in mind." I spent the next hour editing the audio, isolating the most damaging segments. Victoria admitting to the affair, her dismissive comments about our marriage, her plans to abandon me for a richer man, Sasha's enabling laughter throughout. "What are you going to do with it?" Molly asked. Victoria cares about one thing above all else: her reputation, her standing in the social hierarchy. She thinks she can have her cake and eat it too, maintaining her image while secretly planning her escape. So you're going to expose her? I'm going to let her expose herself. The next morning, I called the country club's event coordinator. They were hosting a charity brunch on Tuesday, a gathering of the town's social elite to raise money for the local hospital. Victoria would be there, along with all her friends and rivals. I'd like to make a donation, I told the coordinator, and I was wondering if I could say a few words about the importance of community support. Of course, Mr. Mallory. We always appreciate local business owners participating in our events. Perfect. I spent Monday preparing my presentation. Not a speech, something more subtle. A multimedia presentation about the importance of honesty and integrity in small communities, with audio examples of how gossip and deception could damage the social fabric. Victoria left for work Tuesday morning without mentioning the brunch, but I knew she'd be there. These social events were crucial to her image management. I arrived early and set up my equipment while the event staff arranged tables and decorations. The country club's main dining room had excellent acoustics and a professional sound system. Everyone would hear every word clearly. The guests began arriving at 11. Victoria walked in with Sasha, both dressed in designer outfits that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. They took a table near the front, surrounded by other members of their social circle. Victoria spotted me at the podium and frowned. She hadn't expected me to be there, much less speaking at the event. The club president introduced me as a local entrepreneur and community supporter. I stepped up to the microphone, looking out at the crowd of 50 or so people, the cream of our small city's social hierarchy. Thank you for having me, I began. I want to talk today about something that affects all of us, the importance of honesty in our community relationships. I clicked to my first slide, which showed statistics about trust in small communities. Standard presentation fare, nothing threatening. We live in a connected world where information travels fast, I continued, where private conversations can become public knowledge, where the things we say when we think nobody's listening can define who we really are. Victoria shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She was starting to sense where this might be heading. For example, I said, clicking to the next slide, consider how we talk about our most important relationships, our marriages, our friendships, our business partnerships. The next slide was titled, Case Study, When Private Becomes Public. Sometimes people say things in private that reveal their true character, things they would never say if they knew others were listening. I clicked again, and the audio player appeared on screen. Let's listen to an actual conversation recorded this past weekend at this very club. Victoria's voice filled the room, crystal clear through the sound system. It's an arrangement that works for both of us. He gets companionship. I get access to a lifestyle Ben could never provide. The room went completely silent. Victoria's face turned white, then red, then white again. I let the audio continue, her dismissive comments about our marriage, her plans to leave me for Charles, Sasha's encouraging laughter. The audience was transfixed. This was better than any soap opera, real drama involving people they knew personally. When the audio finished, I clicked to my final slide, the importance of integrity. As you can see, I said calmly, the things we say in private reveal who we really are. And in a community like ours, private conversations have a way of becoming public knowledge. Victoria stood up abruptly, knocking over her water glass. This is illegal. You can't record people without permission. Actually, I replied, in New York State, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation. Since my representative was present and consenting, the recording is perfectly legal. Sasha was frantically looking around the room, realizing that her social media empire could crumble if this story spread. Several people were already pulling out their phones, probably posting about the drama unfolding in real time. The real question, I continued, is whether we want to live in a community where this kind of deception is acceptable, where married people openly plan to abandon their spouses for wealthier partners, where so-called friends enable and encourage betrayal. Victoria was backing toward the exit, but the damage was done. Everyone in the room had heard her true feelings about our marriage and her plans for the future. Her carefully maintained image as a loving wife and respected community member was in ruins. Thank you for your attention, I concluded. And remember, in a small community, integrity isn't just a virtue, it's a necessity. As I packed up my equipment, I could hear the buzz of conversation throughout the room. Victoria and Sasha had fled, but their words would follow them everywhere in this gossip-driven town. My phone buzzed with a text from Doc. Just saw the video on Facebook. Someone live-streamed your presentation. It's already got 200 shares. I smiled. In the age of social media, public humiliation traveled at the speed of light. Victoria's world was crumbling, and she'd provided the wrecking ball herself. Victoria didn't come home Tuesday night, or Wednesday. By Thursday morning, I was starting to wonder if she'd already fled to Charles's penthouse, but then Ray called with intelligence from the bartender network. She's been staying at the Marriott downtown, he reported. Drinking heavily, crying, making phone calls to lawyers. Word is she's planning some kind of legal action against you. Let her try. Everything I did was perfectly legal. Maybe, but rich people don't always play by legal rules. Watch your back. Ray's warning proved prescient. That afternoon, as I was closing the coffee shop, Trevor Walsh appeared at my front door. But this wasn't the scared kid I'd confronted in the parking garage. This Trevor looked confident, backed by expensive legal advice. Mr. Mallory, he said, I'm here to serve you with a cease and desist order. He handed me official-looking papers. Charles Loring's legal team was demanding that I stop harassing their client and his employees, remove all defamatory content from social media, and pay damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress. Interesting, I said, scanning the document. Your boss thinks he can lawyer his way out of this. Mr. Loring is prepared to take this as far as necessary. He's also prepared to make you a reasonable offer to resolve this matter quietly. What kind of offer? Trevor pulled out a cashier's check. $50,000. In exchange, you sign a non-disclosure agreement and disappear. Move somewhere else, start over, forget this whole mess ever happened. I looked at the check. It was real. Enough money to relocate and reopen my business somewhere far from Victoria and Charles. A clean escape from the wreckage of my marriage. Tempting, I said, but I think I'll pass. Trevor's confident expression faltered. Mr. Mallory, you don't understand. Mr. Loring has resources. He can make your life very difficult if you continue down this path. He's already made my life difficult. The question is whether he's prepared for me to return the favor. I handed the check back to Trevor, but he didn't take it immediately. Instead, he leaned closer and lowered his voice. Look, I'm trying to help you here. Mr. Loring is talking about more direct approaches. He's got connections, people who handle problems that lawyers can't fix. Take the money and run. Are you threatening me, Trevor? I'm warning you, there's a difference. After he left, I called Doc and Molly for an emergency strategy session. We met at Molly's house, where her 8-year-old daughter was safely asleep upstairs. They're escalating, I told them, showing the legal papers. Charles is feeling cornered, which makes him dangerous. Maybe you should consider the offer, Molly said. $50,000 is a lot of money. You could start fresh somewhere else. And let them win? Let them destroy my business, steal my wife, and then buy me off like I'm some kind of nuisance? No way. Doc was studying the legal documents. This is mostly bluster. They're hoping to scare you into backing down. But Ben, if they're talking about direct approaches, you need to be careful. I'm not backing down, but I am going to change tactics. Time to take the fight directly to Charles. I'd been researching Loring Industries for weeks, and I'd found some interesting information. Charles liked to present himself as a successful businessman, but his company was heavily leveraged and dependent on a few major clients. He was also personally invested in several questionable ventures that wouldn't look good under scrutiny. More importantly, he had a weakness for showing off. His vintage Porsche, his yacht, his expensive toys, they were all extensions of his ego, and ego could be exploited. "What's the plan?" Molly asked. "Charles keeps his car at the marina when he's on the yacht. Security is minimal, just a chain-link fence and a night watchman who spends most of his time in the office. If something were to happen to his precious Porsche..." "Ben, that's vandalism. You could go to jail." "Only if I get caught, and only if it can be traced back to me." Doc was already thinking ahead. "What kind of damage are we talking about?" "Nothing permanent, just expensive and embarrassing. Sugar in the gas tank, paint stripper on the hood, maybe a few other creative touches. The kind of thing that sends a message without causing real harm." Molly shook her head. "This is getting out of hand. What happens when he retaliates?" "He's already retaliating. The fake reviews, the legal threats, the bribery attempt. I'm just evening the odds." We spent the next hour planning the operation. Doc would handle surveillance, monitoring the marina's security cameras and radio communications. Molly would provide distraction if needed. I would handle the actual work. Friday night, we drove to the marina in separate cars. Charles's Porsche sat in its usual spot, gleaming under the security lights. A 1970s 911 Turbo in pristine condition, probably worth more than most people's houses. Doc confirmed that the night watchman was in his office watching television. The security cameras had convenient blind spots, and the fence was easy to climb. I slipped over the fence with my bag of supplies. Sugar for the gas tank, an old myth, but it would cause expensive diagnostic headaches. Paint stripper for strategic application to the hood and doors, and my personal favorite, a package of frozen shrimp hidden in the air conditioning intake, where they would slowly rot and create an unbearable smell. I was just finishing with the paint stripper when I heard footsteps on the gravel behind me. Well, caught in the act. I turned to see Charles Loring himself, flanked by Trevor and another man I didn't recognize. The stranger was large, professional-looking, and clearly not there for conversation. "Charles," I said calmly. "Working late? I had a feeling you might try something like this. Trevor's been monitoring your movements." "Monitoring my movements? That sounds like stalking." Charles laughed. "It's called security. Something you should have invested in before you decided to wage war against someone with actual resources." The large man stepped forward. "Want me to handle this, Mr. Loring?" "Not yet, Marcus. Let's see if Mr. Mallory is ready to be reasonable." Charles pulled out another check, this one for $100,000. "Last offer. Take the money, sign the papers, and disappear. Otherwise, things get unpleasant." I looked at the check, then at Charles's smug face, then at his damaged Porsche. The paint stripper was already starting to work, creating bubbling patches on the pristine surface. "You know what, Charles? I think I'll pass." "Then you've made a serious mistake." Marcus started moving toward me, but I was already running. I'd planned an escape route through the marina's boat storage area, where the narrow aisles would make it difficult for the larger man to follow. Behind me, I could hear Charles shouting orders. "Don't let him get away! And call the police! We've got him for vandalism!" I sprinted between rows of stored boats, heading for the back fence where Doc was waiting with the car. But Marcus was faster than I'd expected, and he knew the marina layout better than I did. He cut me off near the fuel dock, blocking my path to the fence. "End of the line," he said. I looked around desperately. The fuel dock extended into the harbor, with deep water on 3 sides. The only way out was past Marcus, and he wasn't moving. "You don't have to do this," I told him. "Whatever Charles is paying you, it's not worth assault charges." "Who said anything about assault? You're trespassing, you damaged private property, and you resisted citizen's arrest. Accidents happen during struggles." He lunged forward, but I was already moving. Instead of trying to get past him, I dove sideways off the dock. The harbor water was shockingly cold, but I'd grown up swimming in these waters. I went deep, staying underwater as long as possible, swimming toward the public boat launch 50 yards away. When I finally surfaced, I could see Marcus standing on the dock, talking on his phone. Charles and Trevor were examining the damaged Porsche, their voices carrying across the water. I swam to the boat launch and called Doc for pickup. By the time the police arrived at the marina, I was home, dry, and reviewing the evening's intelligence. My phone rang at midnight. Victoria, calling from her hotel. Ben, what have you done? I have no idea what you're talking about. Charles's car was vandalized tonight. The police want to question you. That's terrible. I hope they catch whoever did it. Ben, this has to stop. Charles is talking about pressing charges, filing lawsuits. He's not going to let this go. Then maybe Charles should have thought about consequences before he started this war. This isn't a war. This is you having a breakdown and lashing out at innocent people. I almost laughed. Innocent? Victoria, your lover tried to destroy my business, threatened me with violence, and attempted to bribe me into leaving town. If that's your definition of innocent, we have very different moral frameworks. He was trying to resolve this situation peacefully. You're the one who escalated things. I'm the one who fought back. There's a difference. The line was quiet for a long moment. When Victoria spoke again, her voice was different, colder, more calculating. Ben, I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going to make sure you don't get anything. The house, the business, our savings, I'm going to take it all. Good luck with that. Adultery is still grounds for divorce in New York, and I have plenty of evidence. Evidence that was obtained illegally. Evidence that won't hold up in court. We'll see. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen, thinking about how far we'd all come from that first night when I'd found the yacht photos. Victoria was right about one thing. This had become a war. And wars didn't end with negotiated settlements. They ended with victory or defeat. I opened my laptop and started planning the next phase. Charles thought he could intimidate me with legal threats and hired muscle. Victoria thought she could divorce me into poverty while keeping her affair partner's resources. They were both about to learn that I'd been holding back my best ammunition. The real war was just beginning. The divorce papers arrived Monday morning, hand-delivered by a process server who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Victoria was moving fast, trying to establish legal control before I could mount a defense. Her lawyer, some expensive Manhattan firm that Charles was probably funding, had filed for temporary spousal support, exclusive use of our house, and control of the coffee shop's assets. Essentially, they wanted to freeze me out of my own life while the divorce proceeded. I called my own lawyer, a local guy named Jim Patterson, who specialized in family law. He reviewed the papers and gave me the bad news. They're playing hardball, Jim said. With her income and this Loring guy's resources, they can drag this out for years. Bleed you dry with legal fees while she lives comfortably. What are my options? Limited. The adultery evidence helps, but it's not a magic bullet. New York is a no-fault state, so the court cares more about equitable distribution than moral failings. What if I could prove that Charles was using company resources to fund the affair? Corporate fraud, misuse of shareholder assets? Jim perked up. That would change things. Corporate malfeasance could void any financial support he's providing her, but you'd need solid evidence. I had some evidence. The yacht trips, the expensive gifts, the business expenses that didn't match legitimate corporate activities. But I needed more. Something definitive that would expose the full scope of Charles's financial impropriety. That's when I remembered Trevor's warning about Charles having connections and using direct approaches. If Charles was desperate enough to threaten violence, he might be desperate enough to offer bribes. I called Doc and outlined my plan. You want to wear a wire? He asked. Ben, that's dangerous. If they catch you recording, they won't catch me. Charles's ego is his weakness. He can't resist explaining how smart he is, how he's outmaneuvered everyone. If I can get him talking about the corporate funds, the bribery attempts, maybe even the threats, it's risky, but it might work. Doc set me up with a high-quality digital recorder, small enough to hide in my shirt pocket. The plan was simple. Arrange a meeting with Charles, let him think he was intimidating me into submission, and record everything he said. I sent Charles a text message. Ready to discuss terms. Can we meet? He responded within minutes. Marina office. 1 hour. Come alone. Perfect. Charles wanted to meet on his territory, where he felt in control. That overconfidence would work in my favor. I arrived at the marina early and positioned myself where I could see Charles arrive. He came alone, which surprised me. No Trevor, no Marcus, just a middle-aged businessman who thought he held all the cards. The marina office was small and private, with thick walls that would muffle any conversation. Charles had chosen well for what he thought would be a surrender negotiation. Ben, he said as I entered, I'm glad you've decided to be reasonable. I'm tired of fighting, I lied. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. Charles smiled and gestured for me to sit. I told Victoria you'd eventually see sense. You're not a stupid man, just stubborn. What are you offering? Same as before. $100,000, a non-disclosure agreement, and you disappear. Victoria gets her divorce, I get my privacy, and you get a fresh start somewhere else. And if I refuse? Charles's expression hardened. Then things get very difficult for you. The vandalism charges are just the beginning. I have lawyers, investigators, connections throughout the business community. I can make sure you never work in this region again. That sounds like extortion. It sounds like business. I have resources you can't match, Ben. I can fight this battle for years while you go bankrupt paying legal fees. I pretended to consider his offer. What about the corporate money you've been spending on Victoria? The yacht trips, the gifts, the expensive dinners. Isn't that shareholder fraud? Charles laughed. Prove it. Those were legitimate business expenses. Client entertainment, employee incentives, corporate retreats. My accountants and lawyers have documented everything properly. Even the jewelry, the spa treatments, the weekend getaways. Employee bonuses and performance incentives, all perfectly legal and properly categorized. He was admitting to corporate fraud while explaining how he'd covered it up. The recorder was capturing every word. What about the threats? I pressed. Hiring Marcus to intimidate me? Marcus is a security consultant. I hired him to protect my property after you vandalized my car. If you felt threatened, maybe you shouldn't have been trespassing and committing crimes. And the fake reviews attacking my business? Charles shrugged. I don't know anything about fake reviews, though I understand your coffee shop has been getting some negative feedback lately. Market forces, probably. He was lying smoothly, but the lies were still admissions. He knew about the fake reviews, which meant he'd ordered them. Here's what's going to happen, Charles continued, leaning back in his chair. You're going to take my offer, sign the papers, and disappear. Victoria will get her divorce and move on with her life, and I'll continue running my business without interference from bitter ex-husbands. And if I refuse, then I'll destroy you, professionally, financially, socially. I'll make sure everyone in this town knows you're a vindictive loser who couldn't accept that his wife found someone better. I'll tie you up in lawsuits for years, bankrupt you with legal fees, and make sure you never rebuild your life anywhere. Charles stood up and walked to the window overlooking the harbor. You see, Ben, this is about power. I have it, you don't. I can afford to fight this battle indefinitely. Can you? What if I go to the press? Tell them about the affair, the corporate fraud, the intimidation. With what proof? Illegally recorded conversations? Circumstantial evidence? My lawyers will destroy your credibility before you finish your first interview. He turned back to face me, supremely confident. Besides, I own half the media in this region. Advertising dollars buy loyalty, and I spend millions on advertising every year. Charles pulled out the cashier's check again. "Last chance, Ben. Take the money and walk away, or I'll crush you so thoroughly that you'll wish you had." I stared at the check for a long moment, letting him think I was wavering. Then I stood up and walked toward the door. "I need time to think about it," I said. "You have 24 hours. After that, the offer expires and the gloves come off." As I left the marina office, I felt the weight of the recorder in my pocket. Charles had just confessed to corporate fraud, bribery, intimidation, and conspiracy. He'd also threatened to destroy me using illegal business practices and media manipulation. All of it captured in high-definition audio. I drove to Doc's house, and we listened to the recording together. It was even better than I'd hoped. Charles's arrogance had led him to explain exactly how he'd been breaking the law while threatening to break more laws in the future. "This is gold," Doc said. "Corporate fraud, bribery, conspiracy, intimidation. His own lawyers will run for cover when they hear this. But we need to be strategic about how we use it. If we just turn it over to the police, Charles's lawyers will find ways to suppress it or discredit it." "What do you have in mind?" I smiled. "Charles thinks he owns the media in this region. Let's test that theory." That evening, I called every journalist, blogger, and media outlet within 100 miles. I offered them an exclusive story about corporate corruption, adultery, and intimidation involving a prominent local businessman. Most were interested. Corruption stories sold papers and generated clicks. But I wanted more than media coverage. I wanted complete exposure. I uploaded the audio recording to multiple social media platforms, along with documentation of Charles's corporate fraud and a detailed timeline of his affair with Victoria. I sent copies to his company's board of directors, his major clients, and the state attorney general's office. Within hours, the story was spreading across the internet. Local news stations picked it up, then regional outlets, then national business media. Charles Loring's name was trending on social media, and not in a good way. My phone rang at midnight. Victoria, calling from her hotel. "Ben, what have you done?" Her voice was shaking. "I've told the truth. Something you should try sometime." Charles's company is in freefall. The board is calling emergency meetings. Clients are canceling contracts. The SEC is opening an investigation. Good. Maybe next time he'll think twice before threatening innocent people. "You've destroyed everything. Charles is talking about bankruptcy, fleeing the country. I could lose my job, my reputation, everything I've worked for." "You should have thought about that before you decided to have an affair with a corrupt businessman who uses company money to fund his lifestyle." Victoria was crying now. "Ben, please. We can work this out. We can go back to the way things were." "No, Victoria, we can't. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't good enough for you. Now you get to live with the consequences." "But I love you. I made a mistake. But I love you." I almost laughed. After months of lies, manipulation, and betrayal, she was claiming to love me only after her backup plan had collapsed. "You love security, Victoria. You love luxury and status and the lifestyle that Charles provided. You never loved me. I was just a placeholder until something better came along." "That's not true." "It's exactly true, and now everyone knows it." I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow would bring new developments, investigations, lawsuits, media coverage. Charles's empire was crumbling, Victoria's reputation was in ruins, and their fairy tale romance was over. But I wasn't finished yet. There was still one more move to make. The media firestorm exceeded my wildest expectations. By Wednesday morning, Charles Loring's face was on the front page of every newspaper in the region. "Local CEO accused of fraud, bribery, intimidation," screamed the headlines. Cable news picked up the story, business channels analyzed the corporate governance implications, and social media buzzed with outrage about executive corruption. Loring Industries' stock price collapsed. The board of directors called an emergency meeting and voted to suspend Charles pending a full investigation. Major clients canceled contracts worth millions of dollars. The company's headquarters was swarmed by reporters, investigators, and angry shareholders. Charles himself had vanished. His lawyer issued a statement denying all allegations, but Charles wasn't available for comment. Rumors suggested he'd fled to his Cayman Islands accounts or was hiding in a non-extradition country. Victoria's world was collapsing just as dramatically. Her employer, a subsidiary of Loring Industries, fired her for conduct detrimental to company interests. Her social media accounts were flooded with angry comments from people who'd heard the recordings of her dismissive attitude toward marriage and community values. The country club revoked her membership. Even Sasha, her supposed best friend, was distancing herself to protect her own influencer brand. But Victoria wasn't giving up without a fight. Thursday morning, I arrived at the coffee shop to find the front window smashed and "Liar" spray-painted across the door. Inside, chairs were overturned, the espresso machine was damaged, and coffee beans were scattered across the floor. Ray called while I was surveying the damage. "Saw your ex-wife leaving the area around 3 a.m., he reported. "She was with that influencer friend and some guy I didn't recognize. They were carrying spray paint cans." So Victoria had recruited what remained of her social circle for one last act of revenge. Destroying my business wouldn't save her reputation or bring Charles back, but it might make her feel better about her situation. I called the police and filed a vandalism report, then called my insurance company to start a claim. But as I was cleaning up the mess, I realized Victoria had made a critical mistake. The coffee shop had security cameras. Doc helped me review the footage. There was Victoria, clear as day, throwing a brick through my window while Sasha and some guy I didn't recognize trashed the interior. They'd been too angry and desperate to notice the cameras, or maybe they just didn't care anymore. "This is criminal vandalism," Doc said. "Felony-level damage. She could go to jail." She could, but I have a better idea. I spent the afternoon editing the security footage into a compelling narrative. Victoria's face was clearly visible in multiple shots, and the audio picked up her voice directing the vandalism. It was incontrovertible evidence of her guilt. But instead of turning it over to the police immediately, I uploaded it to social media with a carefully crafted message. This is what desperation looks like. After months of lying, cheating, and manipulation, my ex-wife has resorted to criminal vandalism to destroy the small business I built while she was living in luxury with her corrupt lover. This is the true character of Victoria Mallory. When she can't get what she wants through deception, she turns to destruction. The video went viral within hours. Local news stations picked it up, adding it to their ongoing coverage of the Loring Industries scandal. Victoria's face was now associated not just with adultery and social climbing, but with criminal behavior. My phone started ringing with interview requests, but I ignored them. The story was telling itself now. I didn't need to add commentary. Friday evening, Victoria called from a number I didn't recognize. "Ben, please, you have to stop this." "Stop what? Telling the truth?" "I'm getting threats. People are recognizing me on the street, yelling at me, following me. I can't get a job, I can't rent an apartment, I can't even show my face in public." "Welcome to consequences, Victoria. This is what happens when your actions catch up with you." "But I'm scared. Charles is gone, my parents won't talk to me. I don't have anywhere to go." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "You had choices, Victoria. At every step of this process, you could have chosen honesty over deception, loyalty over betrayal, humility over arrogance. You chose wrong every time. I know I made mistakes, but this punishment doesn't fit the crime. You've destroyed my entire life over an affair." "I didn't destroy your life, Victoria. I exposed the life you were already living. The lies, the manipulation, the contempt for our marriage, that was all you. So what happens now? You get your revenge and I get to be homeless?" I looked around my damaged coffee shop, thinking about all the work it would take to rebuild, thinking about the months of lies and betrayal that had led to this moment. What happens now is that you face the consequences of your choices, just like I had to face the consequences of trusting you. Ben, please, I'm begging you. Call off the media, drop the charges, give me a chance to start over. The media doesn't work for me, Victoria. They're covering a legitimate news story about corporate corruption and personal betrayal. As for the charges, I'll let the justice system handle that. You're destroying me. No, Victoria, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it. The line went quiet for a long moment. When Victoria spoke again, her voice was different, flat, defeated. I never meant for it to go this far. Yes, you did. You planned to leave me for Charles, take half our assets, and start a new life with his money. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught. I loved you once. Maybe, but you loved the idea of something better more. After I hung up, I sat in the ruins of my coffee shop, thinking about everything that had happened. 6 months ago, I'd been a struggling small business owner with a marriage I thought was solid. Now I was a divorced man whose ex-wife was facing criminal charges while her lover fled the country to avoid prosecution. Had I won? It didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. My phone buzzed with a text from Molly. Saw the news coverage. Are you okay? I typed back, I'm fine. Want to help me rebuild this place? On my way. As I waited for Molly to arrive, I walked through the damaged shop, mentally cataloging what could be salvaged and what needed to be replaced. The espresso machine was expensive but repairable. The tables and chairs were mostly intact. The real damage was cosmetic. Broken glass, scattered merchandise, spray paint that would need to be cleaned off. It would take work to rebuild, but it was possible. Unlike some things in life, a business could be restored. Molly arrived with cleaning supplies and her daughter Emma, who immediately started picking up scattered coffee beans with the enthusiasm of an 8-year-old who thought she was helping with something important. So what's the plan? Molly asked as we began cleaning up the glass. Rebuild, reopen, move forward. And Victoria? Victoria gets to figure out her own life, without Charles's money, without her social status, without the luxury she thought she deserved. She gets to learn what the rest of us already know, that real life requires real work. As we worked, I thought about the recording that had started this whole chain of events. Victoria's voice, dismissing our marriage as a failed business arrangement, explaining to Sasha that I was too predictable, too accepting of reality. She'd been wrong about that last part. I hadn't accepted her version of reality. I'd changed it. The coffee shop would reopen. I'd rebuild my business, my reputation, my life. Victoria would face trial for vandalism, try to rebuild her own shattered existence, probably move somewhere far away where people didn't know her story. Charles would either flee justice or face the consequences of his corporate crimes. Either way, his empire was finished. And I would move forward, scarred but stronger, wiser about the difference between love and luxury, between loyalty and convenience. As the sun set through the broken window, Emma held up a handful of coffee beans she'd collected. Are these still good? She asked. I examined the beans. They were scattered and dusty, but undamaged. They're fine, I told her. Sometimes the best things survive the worst situations. Molly smiled at me over Emma's head, and for the first time in months, I felt something like hope. The war was over. The rebuilding could begin. Victoria had found love and luxury, then lost both when reality intruded. Charles had found power and privilege, then watched them crumble under scrutiny. I had found something more valuable, the strength to fight back when cornered, the wisdom to recognize deception, and the courage to demand better. In the end, that was victory enough. The story ends here, in the ruins of what was and the foundation of what could be. No epilogue, no neat resolution, no redemption arc for the defeated. Just the simple truth that actions have consequences, and sometimes the underdog wins by refusing to stay down. Victoria's luxury was lost. Her lies were exposed. Her choices had led her exactly where they deserved to lead, and I was finally, completely free.